can I tell that it's going if I'm liking the screen?
It's just going. It doesn't stop.
How can I see people's chats and stuff if they have questions?
Live chat is, however,
Go to Chrome. Okay, we've got this. Where'd you go? Why'd you get rid of it? What? You got rid of the YouTube screen. Oh. Don't do that. That's how you see people's chat. It's on YouTube. Okay. Did you make it go? I did. All right. Sorry about that difficulties. We're now starting the live stream. I'm going to talk about my first live stream here. All right. Sorry about that difficulties. We're now starting the live stream. I'm going to talk about my first live stream here. And we're going to talk today about Webster Speller, a little bit about it, and then how to use it with either a young student or a remedial student. And then for anybody that has any questions, I'll take phonics and spelling questions. And we're going to talk today about Webster Speller, a little bit about it, and then how to use it with either a young student or a remedial student. And then for anybody that has any questions, I'll take phonics and spelling questions. All right, first of all, we'll look at syllables. The whole basis of Webster Speller is syllables. And you teach that syllables that end in a consonant are short, like ab, eb, ib, ob, ub. And long, bay, bee, bi, bo, boo, bi, with y taking the sound of I. Okay, now, if syllables are unaccented, like this is unaccented and this is unaccented, and these are accented, they're shown with bold. It's a lot easier to see in the actual document. If they're unaccented, they schwa. And like A's and O's, usually schwa to and E's sometimes shui to short I. Schwa is a relaxing of the vowel sound. And Y is a little bit different. If Y, like in deny and misapplied, then it has its syllable sound, like as we saw before here, baby, bye, boo, bye. It has its normal syllable sound if it's part of the accented syllable. And if it's unaccented, which usually happens at the end, especially of longer words, then it goes to the sound of E. It doesn't schwa, instead it sound of E, like in cruelty or happy. And then Webster Speller has some one-syllable words, and I actually prefer to use Blend Phonics or another phonics program for that, but I did use it with both of my children, and it worked out fine. But I think some modern phonics programs actually teach those better and more fun ways. And then you go on to two-syllable words, and you can even have kindergartners reading some of these 2- and 3-syllable words because they're broken up into different syllables. Like here, it's bay and then cur, baker. And if they have a problem with bay, then you flip back into your Webster Speller and you flip back and you have them read bay, bee, bye, bo, boo, bye. And then you say, what's this one again? Bay. Long A because it ends in A. And then you go back here and you have them reread it, sound out the bay, baker. And then you can move on. Baker, shady, lady. And they can read some pretty high level words by the time you get to the end. I've had like a ton of first and second graders and even a few kindergartners who are reading the 12th grade level words in the end of Webster Speller. Eventually they get to more higher level words, like here's some 4-syllable words, emissary, luminary, and they're arranged by schwa accent pattern. And I found on accident that it's really helpful for ESL or ELL students whose first language is not English. I had two sisters who they were Hispanic, but I didn't think that their native language wasn't English because they spoke flawless English. One of them had been in school since preschool and the other since kindergarten. But when we got to these higher level tables, they couldn't pronounce these 4 or 5 syllable words accurately at first, but once they did like 10 to 20 in a row, then they caught on the pattern of it because they weren't hearing these high level words at home and they didn't really know how to say them with a proper accent until they learned them in the tables. And then each table, they generally got faster and faster, but each table they had to hear the pattern, and I corrected them with the pattern of how to say it properly and where to properly schwa. And then once I corrected them, just boom, they could say them all really fast and sound them out. And they both did great, and they both gained at least 1 grade level. I think the younger girl gained 2 or 3. And they were originally in my class not because they were ESL, but because they had reading problems. Here's some more. Again, this is some that students whose language is not English or a young student normally can't pronounce, but when it's broken up like this, they can. Elucidate, enumerate, and there's a little thing on the C showing that it's soft. And you can also remind them that C is soft before I, E, and Y. And a little bit even more higher level words as you work through the speller. And then by the end, these are 12th grade level words. I think these are 7 syllables accented on the 5th. Immalleability, perpendicularity, incompressibility. All right, so besides the YouTube, I also have a website with a bunch of stuff on it. And I'm going to look a couple things in the actual speller now. All right, it's going to be kind of hard to see, so I'll just go real quickly. There's Don Potter has a bunch of stuff about how to pronounce things at the beginning, and then here are the syllables, which if your students have a problem later on, you refer back to the syllable table and have them say the whole row of syllables and then whatever syllable they're having trouble with, and then go back to the word. Then at the beginning, it has a whole bunch of monosyllables. And like I said, I actually like Blend Phonics or Phonics Pathways or another word mastery better for these. But you can use it and it works, and especially if you do it on the whiteboard. That makes it more fun. And then the first table with 2 syllable words is table 26. And again, that's the one I showed earlier, the baker, shady lady. And then most of the rest of it, it goes back and forth between some higher level stuff and then some of the trickier 1 syllable words like EA as E and beast and least and feast here. And if you do it as a review, you can just work through the whole thing quickly. For the young student, what you might want to do, or a student who's struggling, what you might want to do is you might want to, for my struggling students, I just do maybe 3 or 4 or 5 rows of these, and I put a little check or a tab next to what I've done, and I save some of the easier 2 syllable words to go back to after they're having, if they're having a hard time working on the 3, 4, 5 syllable words. It hurts their brain if they're younger or if they're struggling to do a whole bunch of those at once. And so I keep some material to kind of 2 tabs going at once that they'll work on some easier stuff and some harder stuff each day. All right, with my daughter, she worked through it within a year. And my son took a lot more repetition. It took like 3 years to get through the whole thing. And I kept alternating it with other phonics programs because he needed a lot more repetition than she did. For an older student, you can work through it in a year, doing 10 minutes a day or even quicker if you do more than that. All right, so now I'll go up to where the chat is, and does anybody have any questions, either about Webster Speller or Webster Speller first, and then anybody have any other phonics or spelling questions? So now I'll go up to where the chat is, and does anybody have any questions, either about Webster Speller or Webster Speller first, and then anybody have any other phonics or spelling questions? All right, no questions? Well, then I'll go over real quick something I'm working on. If you're taking a student through it all the way, I'm working on a document. It's 11 pages long, and it shows doing 10 minutes a day how you can get through Webster Speller. All right, here's that document real quick. Oh, there's a question. I'll go back to the question. And it's hard to see, but yeah, this is just a basic schedule. All right, work through it. Yeah, I have them. I do a ratio of about 10 to 1 of reading them and sounding them out, and writing and spelling them, maybe even 20 to 1 now. But you get a lot more learning from spelling, and so once they got tired, I'd ask them, all right, we're going to do 20 more words. You can either read 20 words or spell 3, or give them a choice like that. But you always want to make sure, especially for the lower level words and the basic syllables, that that they need to be able to spell those. And also you need to I would review a little bit of the syllables every day. And I would also do like am and may, like in maker, to compare and contrast them, and then just some random syllables every day. At first you work through the whole table. But yeah, work through, it's just having them sound them out, and then if they have trouble, then you just help them. So like I'll get out the actual speller here. Oops, that's my document. I can't find it. I'll go back to my slide. But if you had these syllables, yeah, you'd say, all right, read these syllables, and then and you'd make sure they're sounding it out at first, and then once you know that they know how to sound it out, then you can just let them read them. And then they'd say ab, eb, ib, ob, ub, and then the next one I think is ad, ed, id, odd, ud, and you have them just keep doing that. And then once you've gone through all the syllables, you can go to the 2-syllable words. And I have I normally teach a class that's about 10, it's 10 lessons long, and I have it on a link that I share on a homeschooling forum, and I'm eventually going to make it live. It's called Syllable Spell Success, and that's a 10-week class that I teach, and it averages 1 to 2 grade levels of improvement after going through that. And it's a quick review of phonics basics with adding in the syllables and going through blend phonics and going over some spelling rules. And then I go to Webster Speller, and I also do some Greek and Latin word roots with some Greek and Latin bingo. And I actually have some graphs of some students that have gone through this and how they've improved. Like this boy, he was my worst guesser ever. He had to take the class twice. And at that time it was 18 hours, and I've got it a lot more streamlined now. So he did 2 18-hour classes, and after the first one, he had improved 2 grade levels, and he went from reading holistic words, which are sight words, at 48 words a minute to 53 words a minute. And his phonetic words, they got a lot more accurate. He went from 71% accuracy to 85% accuracy, but he stayed about the same word per minute, 23 words per minute, which he was in 4th grade, and that's a little bit slow for 4th grade unless you have dyslexia. Most 4th graders are reading them at least 40 or 50 words per minute. And then he took the 2nd class, and he had to withdraw about halfway through the class because his family was moving, and it was actually a good move for them. It got him out of an inner city school. His mom got a better job, and his mom went to the last couple classes before he left to learn how to work with him. But I retested him right before he left to kind of see where he was at and what his mom needed to work on. And he hadn't improved another grade level yet, but his accuracy had gone up from 85% to 98% on the phonetic words, and he was reading them at 52 words per minute. And this chart and these numbers come from, I also did a grade level test, but this chart and these numbers come from the Miller Word Identification Assessment, MWIA, which is a diagnostic test I give to all my students to see how fast they're reading each type of words. And if there's a slowdown, then I try to limit them from doing any outside reading of sentences or stories and try to limit their guessing and do a lot of nonsense words until they're reading well. And I've had hundreds of students, and most of them, here's another girl, most of them read, if they're a poor reader and reading below grade level, most of them read between 40 and 100 words per minute. But I had one boy who had dyslexia in his family, and he wasn't diagnosed with dyslexia, but I'm pretty sure he had it, and his father had been diagnosed. And he was reading at, when he started, 10 and 7 words per minute, and then he improved to 14 and 10 words per minute. And after the first class, he didn't have any gain on the reading grade level, but he went through the 2nd class, and then he watched through my online lessons 3 times, and he eventually got to grade level, but he was still reading really, really, really slow, and I didn't give him another MWIA, so it just shows 2 MWIAs here, but he actually did get a lot more accurate and up to grade level. And this is a 1st grader, and it's normal as you're just learning to have pretty low word per minute rates, and his improved a lot after he took the class, but he didn't. At the time, I just had the NRF grade level test. I've since made a 40L grade level test that records incremental improvement, and he would have improved on that, but he wasn't quite reading well enough to pass the 1st grade level. On the NRF test, it only gives increments of 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th. It doesn't give incremental progress. All right. So, any other questions? Oh, for basics, I really like, I have here, I'll go ahead and get a new window and show it. Blend Phonics. And I have a program that I've tested with my remedial students over, I've taught the same basic things for the last 20 years, but I've made it for a group class and refined it and added in the Webster Speller over the last 8 years or so. it's a syllable spell success, and I combine blend phonics with Webster Speller, and I have in a transcript here an idiot-proof guide to what exactly to say and how to teach each of the things. It says lesson 1, welcome to syllable spell success, and then it says the vowels are A, E, I, O, U, and sometimes Y. Short sound is A, say A, and then it tells you how to add in the syllables to blend phonics, and you work through blend phonics at the beginning, and then going through all the one-syllable words, which I think, like I said, I think it's actually a much better layout than Webster Speller. Webster was good at a lot of things, but his best thing is the syllables and, of course, his dictionary. And on here is also the fun games, and it shows a short version of Blend Phonics, which I like for remedial students. Instead of the whole thing, it's called the Blend Phonics Nonsense Words document. And so it's a lot harder for them to guess if it's a nonsense word. Of my hundreds of students, I've only had one try to guess a nonsense word, and he was that 4th grade boy that I showed that ended up taking the class twice. And when he was reading real words, we had to make him for a couple weeks sound out every one like b, at, bat, every single time until he stopped guessing. And we did a lot of nonsense words with him, and eventually he took some home and his mom started working on him with him too, because he was just such a guesser that he couldn't help himself. And it's kind of hard. I mean, it's not their fault, but it kind of makes you mad, and it's you just want to say stop, but instead you have to be patient and know that it's not their fault. It's too many sight words that it gets them into that guessing habit and not sounding out. And so it goes through some short vowels first and some short vowel nonsense words, and then it adds in like sh, like sheck, lish, shif, and it just works through all the basic patterns. And then here it's ch, and you can have them do these, and then you can refer back to the regular blend phonics and just spell a few normal words. You probably don't want to make them try to spell a nonsense word. But my Syllable Spell Success, it shows, it's all free to print, and it shows how to combine both of them. But it only has a little bit of the higher level Webster words, just kind of to get people hooked and show how it works, and then you can go back and do the rest of Webster that you haven't done. And it also has syllable division worksheets. And this one is a mix of nonsense words and real words, which I found a lot more powerful for a remedial student that's doing a lot of guessing, and then they know a lot of simple words, and so they need to go back and practice with something that's a lot harder for them to do, but it's really working their brain, and it really makes them learn a lot faster. And this first one, you divide between 2 consonants, and I have the students find the 2 consonants in the middle and draw a line with a pencil and then sound it out. Like this first one is rin cap, and they put a line between the N and the C, and then they'd sound out r, in, rin, and then k, ap, cap. And then once they get good at it, you can let them do it more normal, just like lat lip. But at the beginning, if they're having a hard time, have them sound out each part and then put it all together. And if they have a hard time finding the 2 consonants in the middle, you can have them put a little X above or below the vowels, and then that shows everything remaining is consonants, and then it kind of highlights the 2 consonants in the middle, and they can divide between them. And then syllable division exercise 3, this is like that first table of Webster that has 2 syllable words. These are all 1 consonant divide before, making it long, like timer, grader, hijack, Cupid. And for students that have learned a lot and focused a lot on the CVC words, the 1-syllable words like bat and cat and hat, it can be really hard to do the long vowels, and this isn't covered in a lot of phonics programs. And then the next one highlights the difference between the 2, like dinner and diner. So it's 2 consonants you divide between, making the vowel short because it ends in a consonant. 1 consonant you divide before, making the vowel long because it ends in a vowel. And there are a few exceptions to that rule, mostly for Latin are exceptions on my syllable division rules sheet, which is also linked here. It should be, yeah, syllable division rules. I show them all, and exception is Latin words, and then this one here also has an exception for some Latin words. Those would be for supplementing Webster. Oh, that just kind of shows, it teaches you how to teach through Webster, and it reviews all the basic phonics, and then leads into Webster, and then after that, if you decide it's working real well, then you can go on and do the rest of Webster. Or if you're committed that you want to do it, then you can go to 6-year-old and 10-year-old together. It really depends on the personalities. A lot of my remedial students, I just warn them right up front that that their brain isn't used to this, and they've been taught a different way, and that someone who's done it this way from the beginning is going to surpass them. And with my classes, I really don't have a choice, because we just have them all, and I warn it. And most of them are fine with it. But it depends on their personalities, because the younger can surpass the older. And if I have an older girl, and if they were switched, she would have been reading better than him, even though she's 3 years older than him. And I don't think that would have made them uncomfortable, because they had the opposite going on with math, but you never know, especially when they're that young. But what you could do is you could just do a little daily review of syllables together, and then work with them separately. Or you could try it out, but depending on their personalities, you'll have to see. And that is the good thing about Webster Speller with large groups and multiple children, is that you have that basis of syllables. So everybody's working on the syllables, and that's the foundation for it. And so you can do a little bit of syllables together, and then move on to whatever else you're going on. And also, you could have an older child spell some of the things that a younger child might be just sounding out and not yet able to spell. Like when my kids were young, like I didn't make them spell the 3, 4, 5 syllable words. I only had them try to spell some of the simpler words. And once they started getting to the 3 syllable words, I stopped having them spell them. But they can spell some of the easier 2 syllable words, especially if you give them some hints. All right. Any more questions? Okay, here is the actual Webster Speller, and I'll go over real quickly how you could do it working with a younger student. So here is the basic syllables, and you could start out your day. You could have one child read the ab, eb, ib, ob, ub, and then the next child read the ak, ek, ik, ok, uk, and just alternate like that. And then I'd have them all do together. Think about it first. The tricky ones, which are, let me find it. K, si, si, ko, ku, si, and even harder, ske, si, si, sko, sku, si. And with these, I put a little S over the C when it's before an I or Y, and if the little thing on the bottom doesn't help them remind that. And with the SCA, especially for a younger student, you may also have to put a K over the C when it's before an A, an O, a U, and have them do it with the hints first and then try to sound it out without the hints. Like I'll just write these on a whiteboard and I'll put the hints on top, and they'll sound them out, and then I erase the hints. And I'm not sure where they are, but you need to start with oh, here they are. You need to start with this one first before you go to the SCA, the basic K, C, Si, Ko, Ku, Si, and then the Sk, Si, Si. And that one you might need to work on for months. The rest of them, they usually get them pretty fast, but the Sk, Ski, Si, that one takes a lot of practice to be able to sound them out correctly. And then you could, after your younger student goes through the basics, then they can do these words. And at the end, there's a table, and also in the excerpts, which is what I use in the syllables program. It just has one of each grade level. Like it has the syllables, and then it has the first one, which is these are 4th grade level words, and that's based on Don Potter ran the sentences through a word program that outputs a grade level of sentences. And so the kids, especially if they've been behind, they get really excited once they get words above their grade level. And some of them, it's kind of funny. A first grader's like, but I'm in 1st grade. I can't read these. I'm like, yes, you can. I've had kindergartners read these. You break it up and you'll be able to do it. And that's the power of the speller. And so your 6-year-old might be working, might not be able to get at the beginning of the year, especially past the 2 or 3 syllable words, but your older students should be able to. But if they have a really good language brain, I've had kindergartners reading these 12th grade level words. So it can be done. It's when they're broken up like that, it's really powerful. And when I added in the Webster Speller to my tutoring, before that, I usually got most of my students to grade level and a few 1 grades above. And after adding the Webster Speller, I started getting a few that were able to read 3, 4 grades above their grade level on a reading test, not just in these words. You know, a lot of them were able to do the 12th grade level words, but when they did the reading grade level test, they were maybe only 1 or 2 grades over. But I had a couple 5th graders who went from being behind to testing at the 8th grade level on the National Right to Read Foundation test, and extension I have of that. That one only goes up to the 6th grade level, and I made an extension that went up to 12th grade level. So you can print out. Don Potter has a free PDF of the entire Webster Spelling book, and then he also has one that you can buy on Amazon if you like actual books. Noah's Webster Spelling Book Method. Here it is, and I have a copy of it, and I usually work off of PDFs, but I like to show people a copy of the book for people that like actual books. And if I'm using one student that sometimes I use the book, but I like to check off like what they've done or not and keep little tabs and write it in pencils, and I don't really like to write in books, so I usually like to use printed versions when I'm working with students. But Don spent a lot of work retyping this up, and he's a school teacher, so he can always use the support. Yeah, an older person who doesn't pronounce the word correctly, yeah, it can really help with that. And especially once they do, he should be able to work through it really quickly. And then once you do the pattern of them, then it helps you figure out the pattern for other words, not just the 6,000 that are in the spelling book, but it should help you, an older student, it should help their pronunciation if they're able to read pretty well but have bad pronunciation of harder words. Which everybody, like a few that they say incorrectly, but if it's a big problem, yeah, it can help a lot for anybody. And like I said, especially someone whose language isn't English, but someone who's prone to it. Yeah, generally boys. Some girls, but generally boys do. They don't have, in general, girls have more language brain than boys, and in general, boys are better at math and science. And I found that with my own children as well. And overall, the majority of the students I tutor. In fact, I had a student who, she was really behind, and I worked with her, and she got a lot better, and she was still reading like less well than my son, but like a new thing that I taught her that he hadn't learned yet, she got it way faster than he did, because she just, once she had the tools to do it right, she just clicked, and he needed a little more review on it. So like, yeah, if you see the pattern of them, here's some harder words that someone might pronounce some of them incorrectly: triennial, lixivial, millennial, quadrennial. And once they see a whole bunch of it with a pattern, and they've done a bunch of them, then they can recognize similar words in their own reading. But there's 6,000 words here, which is really a lot. So but again, like I said, you can actually work through it pretty quickly if you do a little bit a day. And also, I've found with my remedial students that it improved their reading speed. And I have a theory that for an older student that's reading a little slower, that doing a bunch of nonsense words and working through this might, in the long run, improve their reading speed. You get an initial slowdown sometimes. If you look at the graphs from people here who have the MWIA, initially, some of them will slow down a little bit. Some of them increase, but let me see if I can find one that slowed down. Oh, here we go. She was reading 120 words per minute on the holistic words and 57 minutes on the phonetic words. And then she slowed down to become more accurate, and as she gained a reading grade level. But her phonetic improved from 60 to 80. But sometimes as they start learning to read in a new way, and especially if they've got a lot of sight words, or if they just haven't been paying as much attention to the phonics of it, as they start to do nonsense words and sounding everything out, there can be an initial slowdown. But in the long run, brain studies have showed that that's how your brain is reading, and it's processing the sounds of every single letter or letter team just all at once in parallel, just super fast, and so fast that you think you're reading it by sight, but your brain is actually decoding it sound by sound, just super fast all at once. And so if you get faster and faster and faster with each of the individual sounds, then it should overall improve your reading speed in the long run. Although once you're learning a new method of doing something, it's initially uncomfortable, and then once it gets automated, that's when you see a speed up, once you're doing things a better, more efficient, more accurate way. And my syllable spell success page there that I just showed, I have a silent reading grade level test, and I'd be interested to see if, and you could email me, if your 14-year-old actually does improve his reading speed after working through this and some nonsense words. Depending, if if someone's reading 500 words a minute or more, it's probably not going to help them. But if you're reading 300 to 400 words a minute or less silently, then it probably will help you. And I have on that Syllable Spell Success page, I have a test that you can do for silent reading speed. And there's several different ones because you don't want to reread the same passage, or you're going to read it faster just because it's the same passage. So it has several different passages, all from the same book. And I have 2 different books. For an older student, there's War of the Worlds. And for the younger student, there's something from, it's a Danny Meadow Mouse. And there's instructions on how to give that and how to find out the reading speed. Wow, he beats your reading speed. Well, then he might not improve much. But it should help the pronunciation. It might improve your reading speed. I actually, I got phonics and then some whole word, and I never got a really good spelling instruction. I just got random lists. And so after learning all this phonics, I've always been a fast reader, and it didn't improve my reading speed, but it improved my spelling. Like back in the day when Word used to inform you how many words you had to do it all at the end, and then it would inform you how many words you had misspelled. It was generally a lot, like sometimes 5 or 6 words a page. And now I can type a couple pages and usually have 1 or no errors. And so as I've spent the last 20 years teaching all this phonics and learning all the phonics and spelling rules, that my spelling has gotten a lot better. But if your reading speed is slower, it could help. Like I said, I haven't tested that yet. All right, any more questions? I'll wait a few more minutes, and then if not, I'll end it up. All right, I'll go ahead and end it up. And if anyone has any questions, you can put them in the comments below or send me an email. Thanks for watching. No.
You done?
Yeah, I'm done. I was trying to make a thumbnail for it. Oh.
Was it okay or?
Yeah, I think so. I probably would have been better if I put the thing into full screen. Whatever. I'll do that next time.